Hey guys, I'm so anxious to get to Astarion's quest with Cazador, but I thought it might make sense to actually roll out the content in the order I completed it in, especially in case people want to try and figure out how to recreate my path once they see some of my outcomes later. So, pretty early on in Act 3, you get the chance to go to the circus. And while there is a ton of hilarious stuff going on there, there is one romantic scene in particular that is worth mentioning. I'm also going to warn this very character that offers the scene has spoilers. So if you haven't gotten this far in the game, make sure you don't mind ruining it for yourself if you're going to keep watching. So there is a Dryad on the circus grounds named Zethino, and when you approach her, she will mention that you're in love. Agreeing that you are indeed in love with someone will give you the option to bring along that person for an intimate encounter where she will test the strength of your relationship. I was really excited at the prospect of seeing what she had to say about Astarion, but I would have thought he'd hate this sort of thing. I was actually really surprised when he just went along with it like it was nothing.
Oh, my love. How could I say no?
He almost sounds excited about it. Almost. But that's probably just my own wishful thinking. Either way, I appreciate him going along with it because I love this sort of thing. Zethino will whisk the two of you away to a beautiful waterfall where Tav stands at one end of a log and Astarion at the other. The idea is for you to get closer to him, and you do that by answering the Dryad's questions about him correctly. And by now, Astarion is actually looking pretty skeptical about this whole thing and probably wishing he hadn't agreed to it. So this encounter was a little different from what I expected. I'm going to play my first time through it for you, and you can see how miserably I failed at picking what he wanted to hear.
I see you. I see the bond between you. So tender, so fragile. But do you see it for yourselves? Astarion, a tumultuous past hides behind. The heart is fraught. So let us begin with the joyous. When is he happiest?
Excuse me. I've been happy. Thank you very much. I'm not right now, but whose fault is that?
All affections face their trials. Your bond quivers, but it does not yet break. Many things delight the heart, but only one makes it sing. Tell me, what does he desire more than anything?
You're not wrong, but do we need to tell every stranger we meet our business?
The sweetest loves dance lightly on the tongue, but now we must dig deeper, into the most painful reaches of the spirit. Fear sits in the soul of all. To tame it, we must name it. Astarion, what is his deepest fear?
Oh, I like that answer. Yes, let's go with that.
You betray yourselves. A bond based on lies will one day be severed.
Well, that was a disaster. Can we call time on this farce, please?
Your bond is false, and I know why. Because your heart belongs to another.
I've got to say, my biggest complaint about this scene was how it actually made me feel like I didn't know Astarion very well. And after winning his approval over and over for the past few years in early access, and even in the full game, I'd like to think I'm a bit of an Astarion expert by now. And I also thought we were taking this whole thing seriously, but it seems he comes into it pretending to go along, but not actually wanting to be serious. Perhaps it's because someone else is there and he doesn't wish to be vulnerable in front of them. That could definitely make sense, but it still left me feeling a little, I don't know, bleh about how my initial scene went. And then finding out what the good answers were after the fact, it was just like, I was a little disappointed. This is a case of me wanting to be honest, though, and him wanting desperately to hide the truth. I kind of agree with Zethino at the end here, where she basically says a bond based on lies will one day be severed. I don't like that I basically have to make light of everything just to get his approval here, and I kind of thought we got past all that, but I guess there's always setbacks when it comes to growth, right? So getting back to the questions she asked, though, the first one being, when is he the happiest? I answered what I thought was the truth. You know, that he probably hasn't been happy in a very long time, because none of the other answers really felt right. He did not like that answer and just went off on the defensive, getting pretty pissed and saying he's been happy and he's unhappy now because of me. It was pretty brutal, and I was just sitting there gritting my teeth like, damn. The next question was about what he desires most, and I thought that answer was pretty clear too. Like, duh, he wants his freedom, right? He even replies that it's true, but gets upset about me telling every stranger about his business and actively disapproved, which goes along with what I said about not wanting to have this discussion in front of someone else, but then why agree to it in the first place? Either way, I'm not doing too well on this run, guys. In fact, I think I'm going to crawl up into a ball and cry. I've done so poorly. The last question was, what is his deepest fear? And by now I'm beginning to understand that he doesn't want me to give serious answers, because otherwise I would have picked the part about feeling like a slave to someone else forever. But instead I picked most things fear him, actually, and he liked that response a lot, and I even gained some approval back. But it still felt kind of bad because I was forcing myself to be a certain way that didn't necessarily feel right. I'm trying to work on helping him fix all of this fakeness and not wanting to enable it. There are times when you're both like cracking jokes and it's funny, but this isn't one of those times. It was also pretty heart-wrenching when he called the whole thing a disaster and a farce. Well, maybe it wouldn't have been, darling, if you had been a little more honest. Pfft, he never even meets me in the middle and just takes off, leaving me to feel like chopped liver. Tav even makes this exasperated look to really hit the lameness home. It didn't really make a lot of sense why she said our bond is false either, and that my heart belonged to another. I mean, I had romanced Gale up until the point when I had to choose, and I picked Astarion, so maybe she was picking up on that and trying to say I was still in love with Gale, but then I finally understood that it was just an Orin trick. So at this point, it becomes more about the story and less about your love interest, but there was this brilliant line from Astarion that cracked me up to no end.
It's not enough. We have a gallery of villains to look out for, but now we could be infiltrated by a shape changer? I can't even tell if any of you are acting strange because you've been replaced, or because this group is full of weirdos.
That squeak in his voice is just great, and one of the many reasons we all love Neil. Now, you're probably wondering, how does this scene go if you actually say everything right? Well, of course I had to go back and try to fix things, even if his initial response did bum me out big time. So here are some answers that seem to net the best response. Let's take a look.
Guilty as charged. Sometimes literally.
Hear how your bond thrums with pleasure. Strong, vital, pulsing with affection. Many things delight the heart, but only one makes it sing. Tell me, what does he desire more than anything?
Oh, yes. Yes, please.
The sweetest loves dance lightly on the tongue, but now we must dig deeper, into the most painful reaches of the spirit. Fear sits in the soul of all. To tame it, We must name it. Astarion. What is his deepest fear?
Ha! Well, when you look this good... Well, you were right every time. I almost wish you hadn't been, but, you do know me.
How close you are. Two hearts beating a perfect rhythm. But I know the truth. Only one face haunts your dreams each night. Close your eyes, sweetness, and she will come to you.
So, in terms of what makes him happiest, being elbow deep in gore nets a positive response, and I actually laughed at what he said. He was very cheeky about it. In terms of what he desires most, revenge seemed to go over pretty well, and by now he seems almost excited at the thought of all these good choices I'm making, which is a far shot better than I did in the first round. For the last question, what his deepest fear is, obviously you know the line about how most fear him does well, but breaking a nail is pretty funny too. It just doesn't give any approval. At this point, Astarion actually joins me on the log, telling me I was right every time and that I know him pretty well. Zethino makes a comment about how your two hearts beating a perfect rhythm, but it still feels kind of bad because we just lied our way through the whole thing. I mean, if it was a game to see how full of shit we could be, then we'd both be winning. I also picked up on the part where he said he almost wished I hadn't been right. It feels a lot like he's reverted back to Act 1 Astarion, where everything was a disguise, a fake, but by now we've broken down some pretty serious walls, especially from the confession scene in Act 2, so it does feel like a bit of a setback in your relationship if you were actually working on making him less of a megalomaniac like I was. In the end, it's still a fun scene. I always love when you get extra commentary on your choices in games, especially when it comes to romances. When my companions used to have party banter in Dragon Age Origins about my relationship with Alistair, it used to crack me up, especially Wynne. This is a step up from that because there's this whole encounter involved. I just wish it had been based more on my actual choices up until that point with Astarion in our relationship. Instead, it seems like this is a one-size-fits-all bit of Astarion dialogue that they hoped would work for everyone's game. It's not too lovey, it's not too evil, and definitely rings true to how Astarion acts when you first meet him, which is confusing because could you ever imagine him going along with doing something like this in the first place back then? And then saying, "Oh, my love, how could I say no?" Because I could actually imagine him not wanting to do that at all. So it's cool, but it's also kind of I wanted to talk about it though, because ultimately I went forward with the good scene where I got everything right about him, and who knows, it might play a role in how the romance goes later. So I thought it was at least worth documenting this step in my Astarion romance journey for you guys, especially if you somehow missed it. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, as there is going to be a huge slew of new BG3 content coming out over the next few months, possibly years. I mean, there's a lot. Thanks to my Patreons for the support, and if you'd like to help support the channel too and get access to the private Discord and a whole other chunk of content on Patreon, then head over and make a pledge. I'll see you guys later.